Welcome to Stream 2, Sustaining Change, Session 4, Family Justice Centers, Creating Sustainable Impact for Survivors of Intimate Partner Violence. If you're in the wrong session, please navigate to the session you're looking for through the menu on your left of the screen and click the Sessions button, and then click on the session that you would like to attend. Jaspreet Gill is the Executive Director of the York Region Centre for Community Safety, the first international affiliate of the Family Justice Center Alliance in the U.S. Jaspreet spent most of her career in academia as an adjunct professor in the departments of English and Humanities at York University, specializing in post-colonial, Renaissance, and South Asian studies. In 2015, she made the transition to the social services sector to work in the area of gender-based violence. She currently serves on the board of directors of Sampradaya Dance Creations and is a member of the project advisory committee of Red Dot Project. Welcome, Jaspreet.
Thank you so much, Helena. Thank you all. I'm excited to be here. So let's get into it. Family Justice Centers. Now, this particular service model was created to increase service access and improve service delivery on the whole for survivors of intimate partner violence, domestic violence, sexual violence. As you can see here from this particular poster by a survivor, there's a lot of repetition, having to repeat one story. So this is one of the challenges that this particular service model addresses. So one of the first challenges is if a survivor can identify what type of help that they need, they may not know who provides it and where to go get it. Now, this is also predicated on the idea that they themselves, in their state of crisis and trauma, are able to identify what they need. The second challenge is that once they've identified, they know where they need to go, actually getting there can be a problem because agencies are spread out geographically. For York Region, this is certainly a challenge. York Region is incredibly vast, but this is generally a challenge for all geographical areas. And then the third challenge, of course, is the fact that survivors have to repeat their story multiple times. So each time they go for services or they need to access services, they're having to repeat their stories, which is re-victimizing and re-traumatizing. So these are the three main challenges that this particular service model, the Family Justice Centers, serve to address. Now, this movement actually began in the late 90s, and it was the San Diego Community Safety Audit that was conducted in 1999 that determined survivors had to go to 32 separate places to access services. So each time they accessed one of these 32 services, they had to navigate how to get there. And they had to repeat their story each time. And this is also having 32 agencies spread out that are working in silos. So there's no communication, even though that they're serving, providing services to the same client. Now, the first Family Justice Center opened in San Diego in 2002. This was actually created by two city prosecutors, Casey Gwynn and Gill. So it's pretty phenomenal what they created. This was their vision, and they went for it because they were absolutely, and they continue to be absolutely passionate to deliver services, holistic wraparound services to survivors of DV and IPV. I'm going to use those acronyms for the rest of the session. So when they opened, they had a dedicated 20,000 square feet, something that I remain very envious of, and I will get to that a little bit later in the session. So this huge space in order to bring a whole bunch of agencies together for them to collaborate, not work in silos, to better serve survivors. So this was done in collaboration with the then San Diego Police Chief, the San Diego Domestic Violence Council, which included 25 partner agencies who all came on site. The major shift that occurred was that in 2003, Oprah Winfrey featured Casey Gwynn and the San Diego Family Justice Center. And that essentially changed the trajectory of that center and the centers all over the world, or it provided an opportunity for these centers to be created. So she endorsed the work of the Family Justice Centers, and a few months later then President George W. Bush endorsed the work of FJCs and actually announced a federal initiative of $20 million in order to see this model replicated throughout the U.S. So that means other urban centers, but also rural communities. So how could this be replicated? How can it be adapted to these different areas across the U.S.? It's pretty remarkable. The other piece I'd love to mention is that after that appearance on the Oprah Winfrey Show, within 2 years, the San Diego Family Justice Center had site visitors from 77 countries. So that is definitely the power of Oprah, no doubt about that, but also speaks to the relevance, the significance, the efficacy that's embedded within the service model. That was 2000, so that was 2003, then 2005. So I'm not sure in what year, but not only did we have the U.S. Family Justice Center, an alliance, but an alliance was created in Europe. So there's a European alliance of the Family Justice Centers, and there are Family Justice Centers in a few European countries as well. Now, how can we, have a concrete kind of definition as to what a Family Justice Center is? Survivors, we can think of it primarily as a one location, as one place where survivors of domestic intimate partner violence, this also includes elder abuse, human trafficking, survivors of sexual violence, where they can go to one place where they can receive most of the services that they need. They don't need to worry about where to go, what do they need, because they shouldn't be burdened with having to figure that out. They're overwhelmed and in a state of trauma and crisis. So we have these family justice centers, which are co-located, multi-agency, multidisciplinary services with a coordinated service delivery and centralized intake. And I think that's a key part to have, so that there's one door, and then from the moment they walk in through the door, they are taken care of, they are supported. There's that centralized intake, and from there, everything will be figured out for them. They will get that navigation support. I'll talk a little bit more in a few moments about what that kind of service flow looks like for a service user, for a survivor. Family justice centers are also about creating community, a community of service providers and survivors. It isn't about having that hierarchy of being a service provider and providing the service to somebody or the support to a survivor and telling her what she needs to do. And I'm going to use the gendered pronoun of she, that she needs to leave. She needs to press charges. It's not about that type of hierarchy. It's about creating a community. The other piece that forms the definition of a family justice center is having or utilizing and sharing existing sources. But this is not duplicating the services that are offered. And that's a key piece. So you do help to reduce costs by sharing existing resources. And also, it's not you're having multiple nonprofits or multiple social service agencies all providing the same services. So we don't need to do that. We can streamline it so that we all work within a collaborative and we streamline the services that are offered. So this is really about shifting. Working within this collaborative is really about shifting the paradigm. It's not just about working for one's own agency and fulfilling your own mandate and then sitting back. It's about coming together and working within a collaborative. It's about knowledge sharing, especially when we're talking about service providers that come from multiple different disciplines. So someone from a child welfare sector and someone from the VAW, or the Violence Against Women sector. Well, there's a lot of learning that can happen there. They both serve different mandates, but they can come together because there's still an overlap. From the child welfare perspective, increasing the safety of mothers also ultimately works to increase the safety of children, which is their primary mandate. And for the VAW perspective, of course, we care about the mother and children. We want to see them safe. Now, here are the four essential kind of keys to excellence for a family justice center. It starts with leadership. It's about having that kind of strategic, visionary, transformational leadership that can ground this work, that can make sure that the partnerships, that collaboration, that the groundwork is set for that to take place. It's about having the best practices. It's about knowing what are the models that are going to work, what are the practices that are going to actually better serve the population, the demographic that we're here to help. Guiding principles. There's no way that we can all come together, or this collaborative can come together, if we're not all following or aligned with a very key set of guiding principles. And of course, last but not least, is accountability to survivors. Again, this is not about, providing them with crumbs of whatever system you're working within. This is not about a hierarchy. This is, that one is educated on the service provider. I know better than you do as to what you need. This is about being accountable. We're here providing a service to survivors. We're accountable to them. What do they need? Theirs is the voice that we need to be listening to. And that's what's so remarkable about this particular model as well, is that the voices of survivors was heard, and it's in the initial stages in order to create this, and it remains heard in the work that's being done. I'm going to pause here to quickly hydrate. So the family justice centers, well, everything starts with a vision. You don't just open in any of the areas across the U.S. where these were created, and of course in York Region where YRCCS was created. It starts with that vision, and you start small, and then you build on it. So this particular graphic is representative of the Bridgeport, Connecticut Family Justice Center. And this is ultimately what they were able to create. So it begins, as you can see, it begins with advocacy. It's having that voice, having few leaders come together, voice the need for this type of model, and then bringing in those other pieces, those puzzle pieces, if you will, in order to build and create what will ultimately turn into a family justice center. So we start with the advocacy. We bring in, because we need to work with the law enforcement partners. We need to make sure that we are aligned, that those conversations are happening so that we can work together for the safety and well-being of survivors and their children. So this is the U.S. terminology, prosecutors. For us, it's the Crown attorneys. The DV, or domestic violence Crown attorneys. So working with them and civil legal services, family law, etc., in order to don't want to go into the entire list, but immigration, family law, and the DV Crown attorneys, bringing them in as well to work with them collaboratively. Then you have your counseling in terms of counseling for adults, counseling for children. And in the U.S., many of the centers there have dedicated child abuse and sexual assault centers as well, or units embedded within the family justice centers. And comparable to what we have here, of course, the entire social services sector, housing, being able to provide cultural and linguistic supports as well. Then the wellness center, a mental health center, interfaith counseling is what they have, in a meditation. It's amazing that they could have that. But if you recall in that earlier slide, that first San Diego Family Justice Center was created, and it had 20,000 square feet. Actually, I don't remember, but when I was at the conference last year with some YRP, York Regional Police partners, we saw the newest family justice center. So there's the original one in San Diego, and then the one that was created in the northern part. That's how successful, and that's how much demand and need there is for these centers. So one that was created for the northern part. And that, I don't know, just think of a huge warehouse that is reconstructed and developed in order to house all of these particular pieces in-house. I think it was double if I'm not wrong, not 20,000, but 40,000 square feet in that new one. And so this Bridgeport, Connecticut, again, we're talking about really huge spaces, not cramped quarters where everyone is just, please don't imagine sharing, a small amount of space with multiple partners. These are huge warehouse type spaces that have been converted and have separate sections dedicated to these different areas. It is certainly the dream, is what I would say, indeed, and something that I'm also is my vision for YRCCS and for York Region somewhere down the line. So this particular vision for Bridgeport, Connecticut, this was a 5-year progressive journey for them in order to achieve this, to grow from the advocacy point, starting point, to actually achieving all of these pieces and having all of these pieces, these partners come together and have all of these centers located in the larger Family Justice Center. So as I had mentioned earlier, the other thing that's remarkable is that the center really has heard survivor concerns and continues to. So for survivors, their experience prior to or not utilizing or not having a family justice center is that they're fearful of the systems, the child welfare system, the justice system, and they don't understand how the processes work. And for those of us who aren't in a state of trauma, who are educated and whose first language is English, and we are brought up in Canada, trying to do some basic things through, let's say, the justice system, through court, is tricky. It is challenging to navigate. It is confusing. So I cannot imagine what it's like for survivors who are in trauma, who are in a state of trauma, who are overwhelmed, and who are in actually desperate need of supports and services and including navigation support. And court has been listed as one of the scariest places for them to be able to seek help. The fact that survivors have to go from place to place for services and support. So that community safety audit that was done in San Diego had 32. So while it may not be 32 in York Region, even 10 is a lot for a survivor to have to navigate. And the key piece is that every time they go to access a service, to whether it's a different sector, a new sector, any service that they need, they have to repeat their story each time, which is re-victimizing and re-traumatizing because every time they relive it, it's, the cortisol, the stress, it all floods their system. So what survivors have articulated is the fact that they want all their services together in one place. They want this one door, this one door where they enter, and there's a multiplicity of services available for them, and that they don't have to figure out by themselves what they need, when is the right time to access it as well, because you can't access everything in one moment. It has to be staggered, has to go by priority. And this, because this is very much anchored in the U.S., family justice centers, but this type of research is also available here. I mean, very recently, Women Act released a report through funds that they received through WAGE. And in that report, survivors are articulating that what they want is they want to access multiple services in one location. And why wouldn't they? It makes absolute sense. I mean, we see these types of health hubs in the health sector, if you will. So why wouldn't we have this for survivors who are absolutely in a state of trauma and crisis? We're coming together, and that is their experience. But also we can say on the other end, from a service provider end, that coming together, collaborating with other partners, I mean, this just improves our ability to ensure the safety and well-being of the survivor and her children. And it should not, that's not the word that I wanted, but allows us to share in the responsibility of ensuring this person's safety and well-being. So having those conversations, having a case conference where we work together, we utilize our resources and our knowledge to create that safety plan and well-being plan for a survivor. So as I mentioned earlier, no one can take everything in one moment. So this is based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So you have to start with the basic needs. And so everything in this hierarchy of needs can be accessed in one place through a family justice center. But how a survivor navigates and accesses that is determined by this hierarchy. So the first step is to ensure that she's got food, she's got shelter, clothing, and some transportation, that those basic necessities are taken care of. And then from there, then we can look at the safety, protection, and security piece. Do charges need to be laid? Have they already been laid? Is there a no contact order in place? What does she need? What else does she need? Does she need to be connected to a family law lawyer? Does she need a restraining order? Like whatever those pieces are to ensure her sense of safety, protection, that's the next step. That's what we're able to do. And then following that is the connection and support piece. So that's the counseling. That's the group programming that she may need, that she wants. Maybe she's looking for a new job. Maybe she needs some help with the financial pieces, learning how to budget, because part of her abusive experience was that she had absolutely no access to her own funds or to banking, etc. So these are all learning pieces for her. And then throughout this, the next layer that we want to be able to focus on for her, because this is about a future. This isn't just about getting a survivor out of an unsafe or abusive situation. And okay, she's been connected, the charges have been laid, she's got what she needs, and then, she's got connected to counseling, so we're good. Well, no, we want to also help build towards her future. We want her to be able to imagine her own future, that she has one for herself and her children, that there can be a joyous life for her, that she can heal. So that's the next one, is that self-respect, that agency, that's healing for her to be able to access. And the agency piece, so none of the resources that a survivor is connected with, none of the connections or referrals that are made for her are made without her consent. So these are things that are done in collaboration with the survivor. What does she want to access? What does she feel that she needs? So these are tailor-made interventions that are done in collaboration with the survivor. And of course, last but not least, is hope. So when we have all of these things in place that have been accessed, then she can begin to hope for a better future for herself and for her children. And I think that's the piece that the Family Justice Center Alliance really focuses on. And I think that's what's really powerful about this particular model. Hydration break, if you will. So now, this is founded on, this particular service model is founded and predicated on working together, on bringing different agencies together to create this kind of impact and better outcomes for survivors. So as you can imagine, there would be, and there can be, has been some resistance to this collaborative. One of the first pieces is that, well, this costs too much. We can't do it. It's too costly. So in part of this, in response to this, there's a study that was done by Iowa State University in 2010. So while this is dated, it's 2010. While this is, referring to numbers from the States, it's comparable. It would absolutely be comparable to our context here in Canada. So I know when I first saw these numbers, I knew it was, family justice centers ultimately save money, but at the same time, I had no idea just how costly some of these things were. So the cost of a murder to the state, to the province, if you will, is over 17 million. And if there are multiple perpetrators, so that there's going to be more than one conviction, well, then that cost goes up to 24 million. The cost of a sexual assault is almost 450,000, and the cost of an aggravated assault is almost 150,000. So while maybe thinking, well, Jaspreet, these are, it's a murder, that's a sexual assault, that's an aggravated assault. Does it really? Yes, because these are all realities, violent realities that can impact survivors of domestic violence. Sexual assaults within intimate partner violence are a reality, and those numbers are higher than we would assume. The aggravated assault, of course, physical abuse is part of the reality for many survivors. And murder, domestic homicides, femicides, we know this, we've seen the news. They've been on the rise. York Region itself, in the fall, I think in the space of 6 to 8 weeks, had 3 femicides occur. So it is, in fact, this is relevant to the sector that we're talking about. And as you can tell by these numbers, it is more costly to maintain the status quo and not look for innovative solutions to better serve survivors of IPV, DV, sexual violence. So part of our journey, so we were originally created. So the first Family Justice Center, as I mentioned earlier, was created, was opened in 2002. And then after Oprah's show, 77 countries, or visitors from 77 countries came over the next few years. Well, York Regional Police were one of the visitors. And I think they went around 2008, 2009. And it is thanks to their vision, their leadership, that ultimately York Region Center for Community Safety was created. And we were based on that model. And it was only in 2020 that I began the affiliation process with the Family Justice Center. And as you can see, this is from April 2021 that we are listed there as pending. And we achieved affiliation status a few months later in August of 2021. And you can see that where they started from 2002 to the one original San Diego Family Justice Center to George Bush in 2003, creating that initiative, federal initiative of 20 million. And then from there, they've just grown, and they continue to grow. When I was at the conference last year, I think it was somebody from, was it Alabama, Georgia? I think it was Georgia, because Georgia doesn't have a Family Justice Center. That's what they were there to learn, to get the feedback that they needed, to get the solutions, and take that back to their community in order to create a Family Justice Center there. So so we're honored to be the first international affiliate of the Family Justice Center Alliance. And, the affiliation process was a 10-month process. And we had to demonstrate that we were aligned with their guiding principles, and that we had the partners, we had the service delivery model. Like, we actually are, we encapsulate what they're about. So for us, like, our objectives is absolutely to improve service access for survivors of IPV. It's to provide them with holistic support through case management and referrals for key supports, such as counseling, social assistance, legal advice, assistance, housing support, police advice, or police reporting, if that's the route that they want to take. It is absolutely to increase the safety of survivors, and that is through having those conversations with key partners. And of course, the other piece is to facilitate access to justice. So that would be the court support workers who work in the courthouse. That's the Victim Witness Assistance Program. That's law enforcement, York Regional Police in our case, and having those conversations with Crown attorneys. So I'm still in a process of having those conversations with Newmarket Courthouse, which is the courthouse in our area that we work with, in order to have DV crowns actually come on site to YRCCS. So what does the centralized intake model look? What does this workflow look like for a survivor? Well, it's that the centralized intake model means that they come in through this one door and then they will receive the supports that they need. They don't need to figure it out. There is another center, if you will, who are co-located, but they don't have an centralized intake model. So they're part of, the buildings are connected, some of the offices are connected, but there are multiple doors. So somebody can come in from any one of these 5 agencies, 6 agencies, but there's no way to track. There's no way to create that kind of smooth, warm transfer to additional services. So the centralized intake coming through one door, and then we know we can track where you need to go. We can make sure that we can provide that case management piece where we know your information is contained here, and we know what you've accessed and what you need. And that if you come back a little bit later, if a survivor returns a little bit later, we know what's already been accessed and what additional supports she may like to utilize. So the first stage is, of course, to have that intake and assessment, to do the safety planning, to obviously have the consent for services, and before making those referrals. It's about having a culturally responsive support system. So if there's linguistic support needed, then that's why we can have that interpreter on site or over the phone, because it's been virtual still as well, to provide that for a survivor. The other piece is so how do we work towards having a survivor not repeat her story multiple times? Well, that's this shared database that we have, that we, YRCCS, actually created for our own purposes, and which has recently been revamped. So we input the intake and assessment for a survivor, and through this database with our partners, those who are part of the collaborative, we're able to just electronically send, with of course the survivor's consent, we're able to send her intake and assessment to that partner agency. So there they have it. They have all the information needed. They have her story. They will know from this intake and assessment what's actually needed of them. What are we looking for? So it's not just this referral that's sent. There's some context here. Well, this is what she needs. She needs housing support. She needs counseling for herself and her children. But all of this is contained within this database, and then partner agencies can, they have the ability to then make an interaction, and so that we know on our end, this is where it stands. This was what was accomplished in that meeting or in that appointment, and that it's easier to have case conferences and follow-ups with that survivor or with the partner agency. And the last piece, of course, is the evaluation. It's important to be able to hold your own agency, your own service providers, workers, staff responsible or accountable for the services that we're providing. Are we meeting the standards that we need to meet? Are we actually providing survivors with the services that they need? Are we meeting their needs? And for me, that's a constant question. Are we meeting their needs? Can we further improve service access? What's missing? What resources are missing that they need? So where can we go and find those resources, those partnerships, in order to be able to provide more holistic wraparound services for survivors? So this, just like this little graphic, because I think it encapsulates and shows us. I just realized the time. Oh my goodness. Okay. This just shows us how YRCCS is in the center, and then this is our role. We function as a conduit, and then we make these connections to these different sectors for survivors. Here are the majority of the partnerships that we have, and this is an example of. This is based on the power and control wheel. Each of those, the bolded lines. So For instance, using emotional abuse as one of the kind of pies or mechanisms of power and control for a survivor or for a victim in an abusive relationship. Well, then here are the pieces that we can use in order to provide that support to counteract that particular piece. So if it's economic abuse, well, making that connection to Ontario Works, to financial literacy programs, that kind of thing. That's listed here. Here is our current, because it was only in fall of 2022 that we began opening up our services, being able ourselves to be there full time and start inviting our partners to come back. So to encapsulate, I'm going to kind of quickly conclude and give the opportunity for any kind of comments or questions. So the outcomes of this type of integrated model that's the Family Justice Center is that there is increased survivor safety. There's increased autonomy and empowerment for survivors because they're coming into this one center and they're able to self-determine what they need in collaboration or in conjunction with their own caseworker. There's reduced fear and anxiety for survivors and their children. This is such a big one for me. This is what I see at YRCCS as well, because they come into this one location and then they begin to understand, oh, we don't need to figure out anything else. We're just going to tell you and you're going to figure it out. Immense fear and anxiety that's reduced, a lot of stress that's reduced for them. So you also have reduced recantation and minimization by survivors because they're part of this. They're already connected to multiple service agencies. They are provided with these wraparound holistic support, so they're not feeling as isolated or by themselves when they have to go to different agencies and figure this out on their own. So there's also increased efficiency in collaborative services to survivors among service providers. There's wonderful knowledge sharing that occurs. We learn from each other. We are able to support each other. This is not just within my own staff, but when you're working with the agents or the service providers of other agencies as well. And of course, increased community support for services to survivors and their children. That's the goal, is to leave them with a sense of hope and what they can have. So these are some of the impact, the YRCCS impact. So these are some of the testimonials. So what some survivors have anonymously shared with us as to what they most appreciated about their visit to YRCCS. And another question for them was, how did YRCCS help make you feel empowered? Which is a key piece that we're all in my team very passionate about as well. So I'll leave this up for some of you to read, and I will step back and let Helena take it from here.
Thank you, Jaspreet. That was phenomenal. How amazing to know there's a place that can go and just immediately eliminate a lot of the fear, anxiety, and stress, because it's true. You don't know where to turn. So it's wonderful that they can just get there and have the access. We do have a question, and we are open for questions right now if you want to put it in the chat or the Q&A. Okay, and it is, love this. Thank you so much for sharing. Wondering if there's also a component of treatment for the person committing harm, like, for example, men's intervention, counseling, treatment work.
Thank you for that. That's a great, well, thank you for your comment. I love this service model as well, as you can tell. So from YRCCS perspective, from what we do, there isn't. From the FJC perspective, there is offender accountability. So from there, whether that's more of a restorative justice piece, or just making sure that they're, within the court system and then connected to some of the counseling pieces that they may need. So for here, within a Canadian context, that's the PAR program, the Partner Assault Response Program. So it is a part of it, because we need to be working with with perpetrators, if you will, but we also need to be working with men, because men are key allies, because this also falls under the larger category of gender equality, because that's where we need to be going in order to see some change in terms of IPV and DV.
Wow. I have something really stuck with me right from the beginning, where you said, I think on average, without I guess a service like this, they'd have to repeat their story 32 times. Was that it?
Yes, that's exactly it. So that was the safety audit that was done in San Diego, and then they determined that 32 she had to go to 32 separate locations, places, in order to receive the services that she needs.
So is there any information or known about that? Because that really spoke to me, because if I had to repeat something 32 times, I would give up after, I don't know how many times. Or I would, I guess, subconsciously feel like no one's listening, I'm not being heard, even though that's not literally what's happening, but it can do that to you. I heard it re-victimizes, it re-traumatizes, but yes, I can imagine how many people would just give up trying to get help because it's just too hard. It's like climbing a mountain with no equipment, right? And so are there other places like this that you know of in Canada, or is this sort of the...
Absolutely. Yeah, no, we're not the only one. We're the first affiliate, which I'm very proud of, but there are other models in other regions of Ontario. But here's the difference. So I had said initially that, there was that federal initiative of $20 million that was injected into ensuring that this service model is across the U.S. We don't have anything like that in Canada. So if you look up a Family Justice Center in Canada, it's a completely different definition. It's a place that you can go to in order to receive supports, legal supports or advice for child custody, supervision, that kind of thing. It's not this at all as defined by the U.S., which is why it was so important for me to provide that definition. So there's in Peel region, there's a Safe Center of Peel. In Waterloo, there's that co-located services, but there's not that centralized intake. There's something in Durham, but because of the funding model is different for everybody, this is where we see that impact. So in Durham, they're open 1 day a week. In Scarborough, they have to be mobile. So there's no uniformity, and there's because there's that lack of funding. But there is like one interesting piece, if I may. In December, I had a visit from, or YRCCS had a visit from Quebec City Police, because Quebec City, in conjunction with the province was supporting the creation of a Family Justice Center in Quebec City.
Wow.
So they came in with the architect, because they're going to actually create and build this space, with ministry advisors, the future director, their law enforcement partners. It's fantastic. So is this becoming known? Absolutely. And the other hopeful piece is that last year, the federal government actually visited San Diego and the Family Justice Centers.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, when I heard that, I was jumping for joy. And then I wanted to say, we're here. We're doing the work. With the limited funds that we have, we are already doing it. YRCCS and some of the other kind of sister organizations that are modeled.
We need to get this in every province and territory. And so I guess people really who are watching from across the country need to really pay attention to that slide you showed, where how it starts. It starts with advocacy. And so I just really hope that there are some people watching today that are inspired to start advocating and working together and coming to see you and see how they
Happy
can
to answer any questions. Yes.
Wonderful.
People that have had some interest in maybe connecting with you, and you do have a booth in the exhibit hall. So for folks that would like to find out more information, please go to the exhibit hall and you can connect and learn a little bit more there. There's a web chat that just started. So wonderful information. And Sue, Bookchin has
Yes.
also expressed interest in and noticing that there's similarities between what it is that you're doing and the work that they're doing. So that's great. So collaborative
awesome.
information is wonderful.
Yes.
Okay. So this has been fantastic. I'm going to let Helena wrap up and we're going to go into our closing remarks.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Jaspreet. This has been very inspiring and good to know that that it's starting in Canada. Well, it's happening in Canada. That there's the signs of growth in this area, and for survivors, that gives them hope for sure. So we really appreciate you sharing with us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care, all.
You too. So I encourage everyone to tune in at 4:05 for the closing remarks, which will happen in 5 minutes. Thank you. Oh, Jaspreet, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Take care. Thank you.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.